The CEO told the black farmer's son to try to fix the machine. Like a joke. Marcus stood still, the scent of oil and overheated metal thick in the air. He hadn't even wiped the dirt from his hands when they ushered him onto the factory floor. The massive conveyor machine loomed over him like a steel monster, silent and dead for weeks. He was 19, slim, overalls stained with earth, boots still caked in dry soil from the early morning harvest. Around him, engineers in tucked shirts and technicians with name badges, watched with folded arms and sneers too lazy to hide. Weston Graves, CEO and self-proclaimed man of solutions, strutted across the floor with theatrical confidence. His polished loafers clicked sharply against the concrete. The room quieted just enough for his voice to cut through with clarity. "Let's give the boy a shot," Graves said, waving a gleaming wrench like a baton. "Since your people are so good with their hands, maybe you'll do better than the clowns I pay six figures to." The laughter came quick, brittle. Some chuckled behind their clipboards. Others turned away. But no one stopped it. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't frown either. His expression didn't move. He reached forward, took the wrench gently. Not like it was a tool, like it was a test. He said nothing, but his fingers moved, subtle. His left hand dipped into his pocket. Thumb scrolled. A tap. A second. A silent message sent. Then he tucked the phone away like nothing had happened. Graves stepped closer, towering over him. The CEO's voice dropped, now loud enough only for Marcus and the handful nearby. "Well, boy," he asked, voice syrup thick with insult, "let's see what that field training's worth." Marcus glanced at the machine, then back at the CEO. Then he knelt. No complaint, no defense, no pride, just silence and calm hands settling on cold steel. Somewhere in the crowd, a camera phone clicked on. Quiet, discreet. Graves grinned wide for the room. "Hell, maybe we found ourselves a miracle worker." Another round of laughter. Marcus adjusted the wrench in his grip and leaned toward the machine. The noise around him faded, just for him. His face remained calm. No one noticed the steel in his eyes. For 3 weeks, the machine had been down. The Model 9 conveyor unit, a hulking, temperamental behemoth of proprietary engineering, had locked up mid-cycle on a Tuesday morning. No warning, no error code, just a high-pitched screech and then silence. Since then, production numbers had plummeted. Delayed shipments cost the company north of $600,000 in penalties. Clients called, legal sent memos, Graves barked down hallways about sabotage and incompetence. In reality, no one had a clue what was wrong. Their best engineers took turns examining it. They ran diagnostics, changed filters, rewired panels. A specialist flew in from Chicago, stared at the schematics, then billed them $5,000 to say, "It's probably electrical." 2 floor managers were fired, one in front of everyone, the other quietly. The union reps were warned not to interfere with progress. Then came Marcus. He was never meant to be on the floor. He'd driven in from the family farm with crates of produce, fresh harvest for the employee kitchen, as part of a summer farm share deal his father started years ago. He was handing off tomatoes at the back dock when Miss Ellery, the CFO, spotted him. She paused, squinting as though something had just clicked. "Well," she muttered to no one in particular, "Graves did say he needed a new punching bag." She made the call. 10 minutes later, Marcus was standing in front of the machine with a wrench in his hand and a ring of eyes fixed on him like he was an exhibit. They didn't expect him to try. They expected him to fail. "That's Marcus," one of the younger engineers whispered from the crowd. "Cliff Benson's son, you know, the guy who—" "Shut up," another cut in, eyes darting nervously. "You'll get fired." No one said Cliff's name out loud anymore. In the break room, behind half-closed blinds, a junior tech named Luis stood with arms folded, watching through the window. "This isn't right," he said under his breath. "Someone should stop this." But no one moved, not in this company, not under Graves. Back on the floor, Graves strutted, cracking jokes. The crowd chuckled on cue, and Marcus, kneeling at the machine, never once looked up. He just studied the wiring, calm, like he'd seen this kind of damage before. Maybe not in machines, but in people. Marcus didn't move fast. He didn't move slow. Every motion was deliberate, like gravity decided his pace. He studied the crowd through lowered lashes. He saw the half-laughs, the bored glances, the smug grins from engineers who hadn't touched a real tool in years. He made mental notes: who looked away, who whispered, who couldn't meet his eyes. The silence around him wasn't submission, it was weight. Luis watched from behind the soda machine in the break room, just far enough to stay invisible. He couldn't explain it, but something in his chest tightened as he stared through the slats. He looked like the still center of a hurricane, Luis thought. Still, but if he moved... Graves paced in loose circles around Marcus, like a ringmaster enjoying his show. His voice was a blade dulled from overuse. Arrogant, careless. "Try hitting it," he called. "That's how your kind usually solves problems, right?" Another burst of laughter. Meaner this time. Marcus remained kneeling. His fingers unscrewed a rusted bolt with quiet precision. He set it down on the floor beside him, gently, like it was something sacred. The sound of metal on concrete was soft, but it landed in the air like a warning. From the back, a voice called out. Someone trying to impress Graves. "He probably doesn't even know what a torquey wrench is." Marcus lifted his eyes for the first time. Not angry, not even annoyed, just calm. "May I have a flashlight?" he asked. His voice was even, almost gentle. A pause. The stillness stretched. Even the engineers stopped smirking, caught off guard by the question's clarity. Graves forced a laugh. "Sure, Junior. Let's light the way for our guest mechanic." Someone, Luis, quietly moved, walked to the supply bench, and slid a flashlight across the floor toward Marcus. No words. Just help, offered without asking. Marcus stood slowly, wiped his hands on the thighs of his jeans. He reached for the light and nodded once. "Then I'll give it a try," he said. And with that, he turned back toward the machine. His shadow fell across the open panel like a line drawn in the dirt. For the first time, Marcus smiled. It wasn't wide, it wasn't for them, but it was real. A small, knowing curl at the corner of his mouth, the kind of smile that didn't ask permission. He knelt again, but this time, it was different. There was no awkwardness in his posture now, no hesitation in his touch. He moved with the quiet authority of someone who knew the machine better than the men who built it. His fingers worked calmly. A screwdriver turned. A corroded panel came free with a soft click. He set it down beside the first bolt, the pieces beginning to form a kind of silent trail. Not of damage, but of understanding. Inside the cavity, he found a relay board, aged, heat-warped, and flickering faintly. He examined it, then gently wiggled a contact with 2 fingers. It shifted too easily. Loose. Behind him, Graves barked at the engineers, voice echoing off metal and concrete. "Y'all better take notes. The tractor boy's about to educate you." Laughter again, but thinner this time. Luis hesitated, then stepped forward. Wordless, he crouched beside the supply cart and pulled out a voltmeter. He walked it over and offered it without a word, holding it out like a peace offering. Marcus looked up and nodded once. Acknowledgement, not gratitude. He took the tool and returned to his work, unbothered. He didn't rush. Every movement was measured, almost reverent. He traced the current, tested a fuse line, then paused in front of a sealed panel, one no one else had touched. He took out a flathead from the tray, slipped it into the edge, applied pressure. Click. The compartment opened. "How did he know that was there?" someone whispered. No one answered. Graves' smile tightened. "You done pretending?" he snapped. "Or are we just rearranging junk now?" But Marcus didn't respond, not even a glance. He was inside the machine now, mentally, emotionally. The rest of the room had faded. His fingers moved like he was remembering something, not discovering it. Luis took a small step closer. He didn't even realize he was holding his breath. Something in the air had shifted. The boy who came to drop off vegetables was gone. In his place was someone else entirely. Someone who belonged inside that machine in a way none of them did. Someone who, without saying a word, had just started taking the floor from Weston Graves. The room went still. The usual factory noise, clanking, humming, idle conversation, faded into a heavy, expectant silence. All eyes were fixed on Marcus. He didn't acknowledge the crowd, Didn't posture, didn't explain. His focus was total. With a steady hand, he adjusted a small, dust-covered circuit board tucked deep inside the housing, a piece even some of the engineers didn't recognize. Then he traced a bypass cable, unhooked it, and rerouted the secondary power feed through a cleaner port. His fingers moved with natural fluency, like he'd done it 100 times before. He paused to clean corrosion from a sensor, using the corner of his shirt, before sliding it back into its mount. That sensor's not even exposed unless you disassemble the casing, one engineer muttered, confused. Another leaned in. That shouldn't even be visible without the schematics. Marcus didn't hear them. Or maybe he did and didn't care. With a few key presses, he accessed the machine's diagnostic protocol. The interface had been frozen for weeks, but now it blinked once, hesitated, and came alive. A low hum vibrated through the floor. It was subtle at first, uncertain, like the machine itself wasn't sure it could work again. Amber lights flickered on, then green. The conveyor belt stuttered, groaned, metal aching back to life. Then slowly, impossibly, it began to move, a low whir, a grinding sound, then a smooth, steady rotation. The line rolled. The factory didn't cheer. No one clapped. They just stopped, as if frozen in disbelief. Luis let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. One technician stepped forward, mouth open slightly, trying to understand what he'd just seen. Graves stepped back. 1 foot, then another. That's impossible, he whispered. Marcus stood, calmly. He took a rag from the bench, wiped his hands. Slow, unfazed. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The machine was speaking for him now. The machine ran. Smooth, clean, rhythmic. Better than it had in months. The clattering belts, once silent and jammed, now moved with effortless grace. Mechanical harmony born not of luck, but mastery. And still the factory floor remained silent. No laughter now, just stunned awe. Luis stepped closer, eyes fixed on the humming machinery. One of the senior engineers leaned in near the diagnostic screen, blinking at the steady stream of green signals. He cleared the memory stack and ran a fresh boot cycle. That's not even in the manual. Another nodded slowly, and he spotted the relay issue without a scope. That's a proprietary fault code. You don't guess that. Graves's voice cracked the silence like a whip. He must have damaged something else, he blurted, waving a hand at the machine. Probably tampered with it earlier. Set this whole thing up. Marcus turned toward him, finally. His face didn't show anger, only something harder. Unshakable, measured. I walked in carrying a basket of vegetables, he said evenly. You handed me the wrench. The words weren't loud, but they carried. Luis stepped forward. I watched the whole thing, he said, his voice steady now. He didn't touch that machine before today. Not once. Another tech spoke up. He asked for tools, not instructions. And then, reluctantly, a few of the engineers began to nod. Small, uncertain at first, then firm. Graves looked around. Faces that had laughed with him minutes ago were shifting, turning, not hostile yet, but curious, watching, waiting. He pointed a finger at Marcus. Who are you? He growled, voice low. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. The machine's steady hum was answer enough. The crowd no longer looked at Marcus with ridicule. They looked at him with something approaching respect, or perhaps fear, and they looked at Graves with questions. Doubt had entered the room, and it wasn't leaving. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Slow, firm, deliberate. Heads turned. The crowd parted. Cliff Benson stepped into the room, tall, weathered, dignified, the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to command a room, a clipboard in one hand, a folded sheet of something old in the other. Graves' shoulders tensed instantly. You don't belong here, he snapped, though his voice betrayed a tremor. Cliff ignored him. He stopped beside Marcus, offered a single nod. Nothing more, nothing less. Then he looked up and addressed the room. My son did what your entire engineering team couldn't, he said, voice carrying through the high rafters like iron through silk. Because he understands these machines better than anyone in this building, including the man pretending to run it. Gasps moved through the crowd like a wave. Cliff raised the sheet, a blueprint worn at the edges. He unfolded it slowly. This is the original design for the conveyor system. Dated, signed, my signature, and Henry Vollins, the company founder. The same blueprint that built this floor. He turned the paper outward. Dozens of stunned eyes scanned the signatures. One of the engineers, older, gray-haired, stepped forward. That's your signature, he breathed. The same one on the internal schematics. Luis whispered to no one in particular. Wait, Cliff Benson, was that Benson? Recognition clicked like a switch being flipped. Cliff's voice remained level. My name was scrubbed from the patent filings 2 months after a leadership restructuring, right before Weston Graves took over. He looked directly at Graves. And you've been selling my work ever since. Graves took a step back, face pale. That's not possible. We had the rights. You had nothing but ink and politics, Cliff said. Another murmur swept through the room. The crowd wasn't just listening anymore. They were bearing witness. Graves looked as if he'd seen a ghost. And beside Cliff, Marcus stood, still silent, still calm, but now unmistakably someone no one could overlook. Father and son. The real architects of the system this company was built on. And the room knew it. The balance of power had shifted. Permanently. The sound of high heels clicking against the concrete floor cut through the tension. Miss Ellery entered, tablet in hand. No smile, no sympathy. We've finished reviewing the internal security logs, she announced, her voice precise, clipped. Marcus accessed no systems, no files. His repair was entirely unaided, no external help, no prior tampering. She tapped the screen. A projection blinked to life on the wall. Security footage, clear, undeniable. The crowd turned as the video began to play. There was Graves, smirking, handing Marcus the wrench with mock ceremony. Then his voice, since your people are so good with their hands. Another clip. Try hitting it. That's how your kind usually solves problems, right? The laughter on the video sounded uglier now, stripped of context and caught in sharp digital clarity. No one laughed in the room. Graves took a half step forward, his voice hoarse. This is edited, taken out of... Miss Ellery cut him off without turning. That footage is from internal cameras, time-stamped, archived, chain of custody certified. Legal has already verified it. Another tap. A document filled the screen. The original patent filing. Cliff Benson's name was visible on the prototype documentation. Dated, scanned, and notarized. Next to it, the later submission, Weston Graves' name, filed 2 years later. Annotated in bold, conflict of authorship, investigation pending. The patent was submitted well after Mr. Benson's termination, Miss Ellery said coolly, which I'll add is now under review for breach of ethics, potential racial discrimination, and intellectual property theft. Our legal department is contacting external counsel. Graves' mouth opened. No words came. A chorus of vibrations hummed around the room, phones buzzing, texts, emails, headlines. Luis glanced down at his screen. CEO accused of IP theft and racism. Sources confirm investigation. Graves spun toward the crowd. You're all turning on me now? After everything? No one met his eyes. Then, quiet footsteps behind him. A security officer. Badge visible. Expression unreadable. Mr. Graves, I need you to come with me, he said. Graves's face collapsed. The color drained from his skin. He looked one last time at Marcus, as if seeing him for the first time. But Marcus didn't return the look. He was already walking away, silent, unbothered, because the moment didn't belong to Graves anymore. It never had. 48 hours later. Weston Graves was gone. No press conference, no farewell speech, just a silent exit through a side door, flanked by security and buried under pending investigations. The factory moved on, but not untouched. The company issued a public apology, Internally, a new initiative was announced, a full-ride scholarship program for minority students pursuing engineering and technical careers. It bore a new name, the Benson Fellowship, in honor of both Cliff and Marcus. Luis approached Marcus on his way out of the office, nerves in his eyes. "I didn't know who you were, man. I didn't know any of that. I'm sorry I didn't speak up." Marcus shook his hand. "It's not about speaking," he said quietly. "It's about listening and remembering what you hear." Miss Ellery found him by the stairs. She didn't waste words. "We'd like to offer you a part-time engineering internship while you're at university. No PR stunt, just respect." Marcus nodded. "Thank you. I accept. But only part-time." She raised an eyebrow. "The farm still needs me," he added, smiling. Later that evening, Marcus and Cliff walked out of the factory together. Father and son, shoulder to shoulder. The sun dipped behind the warehouse rooftops, casting long, golden shadows across the gravel lot. Cliff glanced over. "You didn't yell. You didn't fight back." Marcus looked straight ahead. "Didn't need to." He paused. "They heard me anyway." Behind them, through the factory windows, the once broken conveyor machine ran steady, a low, rhythmic hum filling the air, like a heart beating back to life. No more laughter, no more silence either. In a place where humiliation was the currency of power, Marcus had shifted the weight, not by raising his voice, but by holding his ground, by refusing to bend, by letting the truth make the noise for him. That day didn't break him. It crowned him. A boy who came with vegetables had left behind a legacy, not of vengeance, but of quiet, immovable strength. And somewhere in that factory, deep in the metal and circuits, something had changed, for good.